Hi everyone, this is Chief Wealth Architect Garrett Gunderson. Thanks for joining us today. I'm so glad that you've taken the time out of your life to invest in yourself and to make sure that you keep a lot more of what you make and that we really dissect the world of investing. I was recently having a conversation over the holidays at my cabin, and this was someone who's very intelligent, but as we dove deeper and deeper inside of how the stock market really works, how money really gets, moved, and how they talk about money being lost, that it never really gets lost, I just saw light bulbs going off. And so I got a hold of the team here at Wealth Factory, like Matt and Tom, and we had a great conversation and decided this would be a great topic, especially a timely topic. Timely because everything that's going on in the economy right now, we're seeing it starting to have a lot more ebbs and flows. We saw that we had a downturn last year in the stock market. Now, it's hard to get this message through to people when times are so good, just going up every single year, no matter what happens. And when that happens, a lot of times people get kind of lulled to sleep. They feel really comfortable with it. And they go, well, I can afford to lose a certain amount. But the reality is, when we start to dissect what's happening now and what's going to happen moving forward and really get clear about how the stock market truly works, I think it'll open up a lot of eyes to help you protect your cash in a lot more profound ways and look at other options of investing. Because here at Wealth Factory, we truly believe in investor DNA. Investor DNA is your values. It's your competencies, the things that you're very best at and knowledgeable in. It's your drivers, those things you want to pay attention to, you find yourself talking about and studying. And when we combine that for focus, it's really about understanding that risk is in the investor, not the investment. So how can you become a better investor? See, the right investments for you might not be the right investments for someone else. Someone who's good at real estate might not be good at the stock market, and vice versa. Someone who's really good at tax liens might be better, someone else might be better at, let's say, commercial paper or hard money lending. And so as we start to look at this world and universe of investing, it's almost become synonymous because of marketing that investing equals stocks and bonds, that investing equals the stock market. And a lot of people have just handed their money over, being told things like Albert Einstein said that compound interest was the eighth wonder of the world, but the reality is Stephen on our team found out that it was security national life, misquoting him in the 1920s from a conference in Austria, that he actually said it was compounding numbers, and that is very different than compounding interest. And so really I feel that the game is rigged against a lot of people because we're being trained, taught, and educated that high risk equals high return, that we should be in it for the long haul, that one should dollar cost average. We're going to look at what these things really mean and what, most importantly, what they mean for you. So for those just joining us, this is Garrett Gunderson. I look forward to taking you on this journey today of just dissecting what's going on with the stock market, give you a little insight on what's going on with the economy, how it's going to be reported, how that more importantly impacts you, and what you can do to make sure this transfer of wealth ends up in your pocket, not leaving your pocket to someone who's in the know. See, there's an ignorance tax out there. And that ignorance tax is when we just don't have an understanding about something and we end up losing. And that loss ends up being a compounded effect because we lose the value of that money over time. And where it becomes especially compounded is if we start to have a negative outlook on life. We start to become bitter. We start to invite in scarcity because those losses become lost abundance. And that scarcity starts to move us towards this negative thinking that destroys wealth rather than embraces it. So thank you once again for joining us. At Wealth Factory, we're here to help 1 million entrepreneurs achieve economic independence through the right financial insight, through increasing their financial savvy in an educational way, hopefully in a fun way, in a practical way on things that you can put right there on the ground. And what I see that doing is changing people's financial future, changing their family's destiny, making sure they can build a legacy that lasts, and most importantly, have quality of life along the way so you can live a life that you love. Now, for those of you that don't know me well, one thing I got to warn you is it sounds like I'm yelling half the time. That's because I just get excited about these topics. No one's in trouble, but I think especially on a webinar, it's good to bring a lot of energy to a topic that normally can be dry, drab, and boring. So I see more people hopping on right now. I know that we are recording this, so if you want to listen to it a second time, we'll make sure you can get your hands on that. And really, we want to help you become that better investor. Let's look just for a minute at the beginning, the difference between losing and transferring. And the semantics really matter because we'll say things out there in the world like, I'm in debt, when the reality is we just have a loan, but we might be in equity. That's something we really cover in the Avoid Debt Like the Plague chapter of Killing Sacred Cows that we cover in depth inside of our Build newsletter and weekly publication and in the Curriculum for Wealth course. I'm not going to go in that into depth today. We're going to look at this other piece of semantics that really harms people. Like this whole notion that we're in it for the long haul is one of the greatest ways to abdicate responsibility in the financial world and really shirk that to the point that it starts to harm people because we think, okay, well, that's a temporary loss. Well, let's start with that. What if you have $100,000 invested and then you lose 10%, right? That's going to be said it as a loss, but once again, we'll get into how that's a transfer. Now you're down to $90,000. Now, if you turn on the news and they say, there's been a market rally, it's back up, we've got that 10% back. Well, the reality is your $90,000 earning 10% only grows to $99,000. And it doesn't take into account a few things. Number one, time value of money. You lost the opportunity to earn over that period of time, and you're not even back to square one. So $100,000, losing 10%, you're at 90,000. You now hear that it went back up 10%, you're only at 99,000, but you lost that time along the way. Now, they didn't stop charging you fees. And if you're not in just index funds, and now you have money managers, or if you're inside of a retirement plan, like a 401k, 403b, there's Keogh plans, traditional IRAs. There's all sorts of, there's all sorts of things even in Canada, depending on where you're watching this from, that are all these kind of government qualified plans that are seductive in telling us that we're going to save tax where we're just deferring and delaying it. And those have admin fees and legal fees and a myriad of fees that can actually be non-performing fees that would not only would you not be at 99,000, depending on your expense ratios, which pay for the fund management, or your 12B1 fees inside of the funds, which pay for marketing fees that go towards that fund marketing to acquire other customers, and all the admin and legal fees. What if you're at 3.3%? Now you lost 3.3% during that time as well. If it's just 1 year, where the first 6 months it went down 10, the last 6 months it comes back up 10, well, you're now only at 96,000 and change. So here we have a situation where we're being taught that we're just should be in for the long haul, which has us to stop thinking, just hope that it's going to work out. But the problem with that is it comes from an accumulation mindset, an accumulation model. That accumulation model states that wealth is a function of three factors. Number one, how much money do you contribute or do you invest? Number two, how much risk are you willing to take in order to exchange that risk for a rate of return? So if now all of a sudden you're going, okay, well, I'm going to take risk. Risk actually increases your chance of loss. And then the third component is time. Time is this major factor because if compound interest is the miracle that they say it is, it takes 30 years to work out. It doesn't work out over 10 years. And unfortunately, what if you're on that 30-year path, but then right when you're getting close there, there's a major downturn or drop like there was in 2000, 2001, 2002, 2008, 2009, or even last year in 2018. Now that's a major setback. Regardless of your age or when you put that money in there, there's a cost to that. See, if we have 100 grand and we invest that for 30 years and we see compound interest and we can earn 10% and it never goes down and there's never those fees that we talk about, that can grow to $1.74 million. That's exciting. Now, if someone came to you and said, look, over the next 30 years, you just have to have 1 year where you get a negative 10%. Can you pick that year? We'll let you do it. Do you want it the first year? Do you want it in the middle? Do you want it at the end? The bottom line is it doesn't matter because even in the first year, it's less money losing 10%. You have 100 grand, you lose 10%. That's, a $10,000 loss. But that $10,000 doesn't grow for the next 29 years at a compounded rate. Where if you lose it in the last year, yeah, it's on a bigger piece of money, but we're not looking at it as growth over into the future because that's kind of the end point. So there's this thing called opportunity cost. An opportunity cost states that when you have a loss, it's not just the loss of the money, it's what that money could have become. It's a kind of an economic concept that's a reality to our bottom line. And at Wealth Factory, we're specialists at making sure that you don't lose or have that opportunity cost, or that we minimize it to the highest degree by A, protecting the downside, by B, making sure you're more informed and you are utilizing your investor DNA, 3, that you become economically independent and create enough cash flow to cover basic expenses so you can invest all of your active income rather than just trying to scrimp and save 10% of that income and trying to earn 10% in a risky way that you're going to find out just how risky it is as we go through this. So I'm Garrett Gunderson, Chief Wealth Architect. We're talking about the perils and the issues within the stock market, the marketing and the misreporting, the missteps and mishaps of why is it that people aren't further ahead, even though we've had people generations before me that invested their whole life in the stock market, yet the people that got rich weren't them. It was the people that took the fees along the way. It's not the people that tell you it takes money to make money, doesn't take their money to make it. The people that tell you high risk equals high return, they're not the ones taking the risk like AIG. You're the one that's bearing the risk. And even if they fail, then your tax dollars come back. And that's one that pays those big institutions back because we feel like we need them so heavily to make this economy work. So it's kind of a bad system that if all of a sudden I'm investing money and then I have some federal government protection on that money and that company fails, well, it's through taxation that money comes back. So we're actually rewarding bad behavior and saying, hey, this company that was either irresponsible, had a lack of knowledge, or did something in the derivatives market, they imploded, and now tax dollars are going to come back to preserve the people's dollars that put it in the first place. What about those companies? I mean, AIG had 70 people get seven-figure bonuses after the meltdown. That was even after George Bush left office and Obama's in office, a completely different political factor that, it doesn't matter which side you're on, there's some problems here. And so investing in the market is a little bit like going and playing poker in Vegas. If you hear in the upcoming months and in the upcoming years that there's been $1 trillion lost in retirement plans or a certain amount of money lost in the stock market, it doesn't disappear. It doesn't end up in the woods buried somewhere where no one knows where it's gone, or it doesn't evaporate into thin air. The reality is when we hear the word loss, we must recognize it actually means transfer. Transfer via the ignorance tax. And look, when we watch commercials, like I was on CNBC, and they're talking about technical analysis, it's overly complicated. They're using a ton of jargon, and they really don't know what's going to happen in the market overall. They're just doing their best guesswork with data, but there's so many moving pieces and variables, from consumer behavior to war to interest rates to you name it, right? Like lies within companies. There's just a numerous number of things, several things. So when they're saying the money's lost, what's really happened is the money's gone to someone else. And by the way, that someone else probably had a team of analysts, probably their entire expertise, probably dialed in with their investor DNA, like some of these hedge funds. Because if they're choosing to use, calls and puts, otherwise known as options, well, one person's betting the market's going down, the other person's betting it's going up. One person's right, one person's wrong, one person ends up with the money, the other person loses their money. That's a very rudimentary look at it, but it's a very win-lose scenario. And for some people, the stock market's kind of the greater fool theory. It's saying, hey, did I buy at the right time? Because when I bought, someone else got the money. And did they sell at the right time? Who was right and who was wrong? And a lot of the value of the companies isn't based upon what's going on exactly in the company. Yes, the news helps it. There's hype around it. There's certain reporting around it. But we're looking at levels right now in the stock market that are before 2008. I mean, would anyone actually pay for this company what we're buying in stock? It's not like we're analyzing one individual business as an entrepreneur and saying, should I buy this business and acquire it because it helps my existing business? Or do I want to make an investment where I own the business? Like, we do completely different analysis on that than people actually do in the stock market, because the numbers in the stock market are astronomical. Price to earnings ratios, what we're paying versus what they're actually earning, and how much they would have to earn to actually pay that off is so massive that how is that sustainable? Well, part of the reason it's sustainable is because people are automatically making deposits every single month. People are putting money into their 401ks and retirement plans, whether the market goes up or down. That's otherwise known as dollar cost averaging, which says, hey, the market's up, sometimes it's down, sometimes just buy every month, and you're going to buy at an average price, not at the peak, not at the bottom. It'll kind of happen over time. But who's here to be average? Right? Who's here to be average? Like, I never understood that notion when people say, oh, the market's on sale. Well, look, if you bought before it went on sale, that's really bad news for you, because you've already got a product that's worth less than what you paid for it, or worth less than it was valued at before at a minimum. And so that notion is crazy that people say that. I feel like it's more marketing than it is strategy. And it became wildly accepted because billions of dollars and plenty of voices that were pundits for that had that become indoctrinated within people, within their minds. Like when I was on CNBC in 2008, December 24th of 08, I said, now is not a good time to invest in the stock market. People should stop investing in the stock market. And actually, the majority of people investing there don't know anything about these companies. They've never stepped foot in their boardroom. They've never read a report. They've never met the fund manager. They're just handing their money off because that's what you guys are having them believe. And I got kicked off and never got to go back on again because it was a little bit too close to home. And that's not what the advertisers want them to have experts come on and say. So that's fine. But back to this notion of money isn't lost, it's transferred. There's one person shorting, expecting it to go down, right? So, they're basically doing a put. Other people are doing calls because they expect it to be more longer, that it's going to go up over time. And so one person's right, one person's wrong, and one person ends up with the money, the other person loses the money. Once again, a rudimentary look at that. And that's how the money doesn't just disappear. When you buy a stock, someone ends up with that money. You bought that stock that someone else owned. They now have the cash. If that stock goes down in value, it's because the perceived value of that by the marketplace is less. Like Enron was valued really high at one point because of hype, because of lies, because of misinformation and misreporting. But the reality is people were willing to pay for it because it seemed exciting. It sounded like a good story. They didn't know. They weren't, even the people in Enron that didn't walk to that trading floor, that didn't know that things were being sold that didn't actually exist, they were putting money in that stock and they were close to it. So hype can really blind us because the higher the emotion, the lower the financial IQ. And so in those situations, when the news comes out and all of a sudden the story's told properly, the stock isn't worth anything anymore because who wants to buy it? Because the company didn't have a real product. This happened a lot in the .bomb, right? That .com era where companies didn't have fundamentals. They didn't have good financials. They were just buying, having people buy on hype. And we saw that with the crypto craze, with these ICOs, initial coin offerings, that there was tons of companies. There was a company that changed their name, right? They changed their name to sound like a cryptocurrency company, even though that's not what they did. And they skyrocketed. And then they tanked once the information got out there. So we have to be careful of these hype markets. There were things like tulip mania, where that was like the most expensive thing you could buy was a tulip. And all of a sudden, when that crashed, some people lost their life savings. So that's the extreme side of this. But I feel like the stock market has continually been a part of that lie and that information that's been misleading, because people will say like the stock market always goes up. Well, what they're not telling you is that it doesn't always go up when a company goes out of business permanently. And so that's another piece we're going to talk about. So where are some other pieces in how money is transferred, not lost? Well, it's kind of like going to Vegas and you're playing poker and you're winning. You're feeling really good about yourself and you don't know the players at the table, but all of a sudden you start playing more and more because you get this false sense of confidence that it's about your skill and you're on a roll and you can't get any luckier. You just got to keep going. But the reality is, what if you're playing with the World Series of Poker champions and they eventually know that you now have enough false confidence and enough of that information that is misleading you that they decide to finally play their cards and they take the chips? You're going to tell people you lost money when you went to Vegas. The reality is you transferred to someone who had more knowledge and was in the know. And this is what happens every 10 years, that people start getting this greed gland that kicks in. I got to get in. The market's always going up, and everyone else is making money. I'm missing out. And there's that fear of loss that comes with that. And then eventually the swipe happens, right? The hedge funds take a ton of that money. Like when it really collapsed in 2008, there was someone that made $25 billion basically buying insurance or buying options on the housing market. So when the housing market went under, they had, people that had bought these notes, these loans as an investment, mortgage-backed securities, that money ended up being in the pockets and hands of people that said, this isn't going to work, it's going to collapse because we're overextended. People can't make those payments. It can't survive. They're only doing this based upon the speculation and hype of the market going up. But eventually, no one can afford them. No one will lend on them. And they made a killing. But everybody said, oh, I lost money. I lost money. No, you transferred money. The money still existed. It just went into someone else's hands. So in this game, are you equipped to win that game? Do you have the knowledge, the resources, the team? And to make matters worse, if you've read the book Flash Boys, you also have flash trading that's happening, that some of these flash crashes happen. And that every time there's a trade that's going on, there's these supercomputers essentially that are so quick that they're skimming and they're boosting the price as you go to purchase, and then they're pulling that and then selling it to you for just a little bit more. And the money that you're holding, that's happening to it all the time. So there's a hidden fee. There's a non-performing fee that's costing you in a market, right? That's not, has nothing to do with fundamentals, whether a company is going to make it or not, whether a company is the right company or not. And even when we look at people like Warren Buffett, that people love to hold in such high regard and say, look how well he's done. When he's investing, it's a completely different scenario than everyone else. He's buying the company out. He's infiltrating with his investment philosophy and his management philosophy and putting a team in there that's going to increase the production by putting more on fewer employees, doing a lot of cut and firing. Like, there's a lot that goes on there that we're not hearing about when we watch the news and we hear all these great sayings and quotes. I love his quotes. I've learned a ton from Warren Buffett, but there's also a very cutthroat philosophy that goes along when he acquires a company and he's buying it to hold it for the long haul because he now owns it. He has a degree of control. When I invest in mutual funds or a stock, I have no control over that board. I have no control over those employees or those executives or the direction of that company. I'm merely a bystander hoping that I'm making the right choice, hoping that that company is going to make the right decisions. They're going to make the right hires. There isn't embezzlement. There isn't some scandal. There isn't pressures of improving their stock price. And so they do things that are less than ideal or unethical. And all of a sudden when that comes out, you start to see something take. But where my bigger concern is, and once again, this is passion, not anger, but where my bigger concern is here's where we're most misled in the market. So let's say that you're investing in a mutual fund, and it's even an index fund, because yes, index funds take care of some of these fees, right? That's not some of the problem that I was mentioning before, because you've addressed it. But when you have that happen, that you're holding that for the long haul, for the long term, there will be companies in the S&P 500 that go under, that go out of business. When they go out of business, our account should show that company being zeroed out and the loss we have moving forward permanently. But what they do instead is they take one of these rising star companies that now gets to move into the S&P 500, and they say, okay, now that company is going to grow, and that's actually going to boost the performance of the S&P 500. The problem is all the money you put in the S&P 500 before that company went under was lost for 1/500th of it for that company. And the new company that comes in, it's only your new dollars that actually get to benefit from those gains. But when they report the average returns, see, averages don't include all the fees, it don't include all the volatility and the impact that has, and it doesn't include those companies that go under and they're gone forever. And I believe, based upon all the research that our team has done at Wealth Factory, that I have done personally, from the conversations I've had from the best thought leaders on this, we have a world where we're going to see more Fortune 500 and S&P 500 companies get annihilated and disseminated over the next decade because technology moves so quick. Someone could be in their garage right now working on an idea that could start to become one of those companies in a year, 3 years, 5 years, where before you had to have so much money and capital raised. You had to have so many relationships and be so in the know. It was reserved for only the elite. Now it's really about knowledge. It's about value. It's not so much about these, oligarchies that were basically, okay, were you part of this, group that was well funded and part of this group that had all of the resources? You could be resourceful in today. And so we see companies that are going to start going out at a higher rate because these big companies, they can't move quick enough. And when they do, like GM shuts down plants, they get this outward pressure from the government saying, don't shut down those plants. We need those American jobs. We're going to take away your subsidies if you do that. And they're going, wait, but now there's driverless cars coming out. And we see the future, and some of these cars just aren't going to be able to compete. Well, guess what? There's new car companies coming up. Like, look how new Tesla is, but how much of a meteoric rise it had. In the scheme of things, look how new companies like Apple's kind of an older kid on the block, but that's still relatively new compared to these old companies like GE. And when they need to get rid of employees, it takes a long time. Small companies are more nimble, they're more quick. We can have companies like Airbnb and Uber and Lyft that they don't own hotels, they don't own cars or transportation, yet they can completely disrupt that entire economy and those entire sectors because technology moves so fast. Technology is going to be one of the things that disrupts the stock market massively. And for those people in the buy, hold, and pray long-term strategy, you're going to get impacted. One, because volatility lowers your actual experience in return. Two, because you have all these non-performing fees that are going on, whether it's expense ratios, 12B1 fees, legal admin fees, all the kind of stuff that goes on with retirement plans. If you have it inside of those programs, that becomes an impact. Then you have companies that go completely out of business, and then that shows a different average because they replace it with a different company rather than zeroing it out into the future with your existing money. So we're being misled. Averages in the market are like revenue in business. You can have a business with great revenue, like $100 million, but if it's costing them $110 million to get there, they're not getting ahead. Averages don't tell us the impact of volatility, the impact of loss, the impact of non-performing fees, or even performing fees for that matter, because it's not accounted for. And think like a business owner. We would never run a business on that because it ain't what you make, it's what you keep. So this is why there's people that have invested money, which we did research from 2000 to 2014, the stock market did 8.4% total adjusted for inflation. You're risking your money, you're setting aside, but the reality was 8.4% because we're accounting for companies that went under, we're accounting for the fees that were coming out, we're accounting for, some of these factors. And look, savings accounts did better during that time. That's the notion that drives me nuts. And so rather than get so caught up in just handing your money over, I don't want you to transfer your wealth there. As a matter of fact, if you are going to keep your money in there, look at ways to add collateral. Look at anything from, can you add a trailing stop loss that if the market goes down further than your comfort, you move to cash? Because people in cash are going to win the game. People that are heavy in cash right now will capitalize on the opportunities when people need liquidity. When everybody's starting to see losses and they're scared, should they sell or not now? Because now it's a realized loss versus a paper loss. Other people are going to say, I have cash. I can buy businesses for cheap. I can buy real estate for much cheaper. I can make money on the buy rather than the speculation on into the future. Or people here in Wealth Factory have these resources and insights and tools that we give you so that you can be more efficient and get your return by saving tax, by saving on interest, by saving on insurance costs or duplicate coverages or improper structure, or saving on all these non-performing investment fees and protecting your downside. That's the key. How do you protect your downside and how do you build liquidity? This is how you can combat what's going to happen in the economy. So to recap, we got volatility that impacts our actual return versus what's reported as an average return. We've got companies that go out of business, and that's going to happen at an increasing rate, on my opinion, because of exponential technologies and because of maneuverable companies that can disrupt entire industries. And then in addition to that, we have all these non-performing fees that create drag. But ultimately, if you hear about money being lost, you're transferring it to someone else. Are they more in the know? Is it more aligned with their investor DNA? Is this their expertise? Do they have a team behind it? Do they have unfair advantages over you that ultimately, like supercomputers are an unfair advantage? We don't know what they're doing. They're just going in there and doing a trade really quick and then trading it right back to us and skimming the top. Read Flash Boys. It was so eye-opening and frustrating at the same time. That's why I have so much passion for this. I want you to keep your money. I want you to build a legacy that lasts. I don't want you to have your mind go in the toilet when the market does. It has to. We're in the second longest period of time in the history of the United States since we've had a recession. When that happens, you don't have to have the downturn. Look, I participated in some of the downturn in 2008 because I had so much real estate. Real estate, I wasn't paying mindful enough, paying enough attention. I was just enjoying the rise when everybody was in the rise versus looking at the cash flow. When you build your stability, you have plenty of liquidity, plenty of cash on hand, whether that's in your cash value insurance, whether that's in savings accounts, or that's in business accounts. And then you have good cash flow coming in that doesn't require your daily management and attention, that recurring revenue that builds more stability for you. And then you can really start focusing on this major opportunity when the economy turns. We made more money at Wealth Factory, at that time it was Freedom Fast Track, the precursor, in 2010 than any other time in the company's history, which started in 1998. Why? Because we were positioned and poised for it. We knew what was happening. We knew how to explain it. And most importantly, we taught people how to navigate that. And with the resources we give you, make sure that you're in the know, that you're not playing a game through just handing things over, a mindless game that everyone else is playing and they go, yeah, but everyone else is doing it. Well, 50 million people are doing a foolish thing. It's still a foolish thing. There's societal norms and myths that actually destroy wealth. And unfortunately, the stock market is one of the main culprits that confiscates wealth through the factors that we talked about today. Don't be sitting there unintentionally, unknowingly at the poker table, because right now the poker table consists of hedge fund managers. And the hedge fund manager at that poker table, that's the game of the stock market. And if you're just handing your money over, you're not thinking anything about it, and then all of a sudden there's a month where it goes up and you feel great about it, there's going to be a lot more months that go down, and I don't want to see you lose or transfer your wealth or money. All right, this has been the State of Wealth, Garrett Gunderson. I'm going to see if there's any questions that have come in. Tom, anyone that's on here that wants to ask any questions that's live, feel free to ask those questions. Hopefully the things that you now know to do in action: build up cash and liquidity. Stop funding things that are a gamble you don't have control over. There's no exit strategy. There's no cash flow coming from it. Focus on economic independence first. Before you speculate with your dollars, become economically independent. Before you speculate with your dollars, save on tax. That is a major return for people. Then you can invest that back into yourself, into your business, increase your knowledge and your IQ, figure out ways you can deliver more value to the marketplace, serve more people, have a greater impact of depth and reach. So these are the kind of things that are the true solutions. Don't think about synonymously investing that means the stock market. There's plenty of investments out there. Tom, one of our writers, wrote a huge list of all the different investments that are out there. It was a lot of investments that are available. I mean, I just endorsed a book that was about how you buy and acquire companies. I thought it was a brilliant investment strategy. We've had tons of clients that they just buy businesses in their sector so they can improve their reach or their impact, or they know how to monetize it in a way that the other person doesn't because they coordinate that. We have other people who are good at real estate. There's a few people we work with that are good with the stock market, but the majority of them are not. So get really clear. Is this part of your investor DNA? If it isn't, what could you do differently? What difference would that make in your life? And what are you going to be poised and positioned to do because you built this liquidity, you focused on cash flow, you plugged the leaks and saved a bunch of money? So Jeff asks, our whole life policies, what we should be focused on. What I like about whole life is it doesn't participate in the downside, right? You lock in your gains once they're earned. The downside might mean you get lower interest, but you have a minimum guaranteed. And it's accessible and available. So if there's a good investment or the right opportunity, you can capitalize and pounce on it. What book was that, Paul? I can't remember what book I mentioned, Paul. So if Tom can type that in. I have a huge amount in an annuity with an insurance policy attached. Would I be better off to cash that out and pay off my commercial real estate or trust? Well, it depends on what's the interest rate you're paying on your real estate or trust versus what are you earning inside of that annuity. That's the first consideration. The second is, what are the tax ramifications of cashing that out? So if you could figure that out, everybody needs to know their cost of money. Your cost of money is your highest net sustainable rate of return, highest net sustainable rate of return, or your highest price that you pay to borrow money. And so when you know your cost of money, what kind of investor are you? If you don't know what to invest in, maybe you're just best paying things off. It'll help you improve cash flow, have less stress and worry. On the other hand, if you knew you could put that towards something in your business and grow it exponentially in this year, maybe that's right for you. See, the bottom line is, what is your own personal peace of mind, and what are your personal options and opportunities? For a lot of people, and the majority of people, just paying those loans off frees up their mind. They feel more abundant. It improves their cash flow bigger than any investment they could make. And for others, having that cash, that might be even better. So you really have to get really, the Flash Crash was the book I was talking about, Flash Crash. So I got a red cover. I read it several years ago, but pretty fascinating read overall. So Tim, you just need to look, it's Flash Boys. Yeah, sorry, Flash Boys. I read it so long, I just know that there's Flash in the title. And I read it page by page, the entire thing. I got the physical book, I read the entire thing. It was that kind of fascinating. So check out Flash Boys. That's the book that you want to grab if you want to learn more about just some of these external factors. And then just take into consideration, what happens when a company goes out of business and what the impact is on your investments. So it looks like there might be a few more questions coming in. I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to invest in this and to really hopefully take action on this and do something. Like we said, we're not selling anything today. We're just sharing this information. We want to build a relationship. We want to get people to economic independence, and we can't do that with everyone in the world that hires us, but we can do that with more than them just by reaching them in some of these resources here. Let's see. Amberly says, I have a wealth capture account, emergency fund, and living wealthy account. I've stopped investing in my 401k with my business. Is it okay that I'm not doing my match? And how should I place this money in whole life? Well, once you get at least 3 months of cash in that wealth capture account, then you can go to cashflowbanking.com and you can talk to a cash flow banking specialist, and they can tell you about how to properly fund cash value insurance so it has less commission and more cash. That's an important part of it. What do you think about cashing out an inherited IRA to pay off debt? Well, Susan, once again, what's the tax ramification of cashing that out? And what are you earning in the IRA versus what are you paying in the debt? For me, I think it could be a really viable situation for you to do that and just simply have that debt gone. One of the ways that you might want to do it, though, is consider moving a traditional IRA into a one-time conversion to a Roth if you can. And if you can do something called a rescue strategy, or you can have a kind of proper valuation that would lower the valuation inside of the IRA a little bit on that conversion, then you'll pay less tax, and then you can use that to pay that off. Listening to you, I moved everything I had in my retirement accounts to cash before the drop in the stock market. Matt, bam. So glad to hear that, Matt. Is there anywhere I can move my money to avoid all the fees that I continue to accrue even while in cash? Well, I think the best savings account I've seen is like 2.7% that's out there, and there's a minimum amount you have to put into it. So overfunding a whole life is the best storage tank that I found for money. I could talk about other things, but that's the best storage tank. Let's see. Steven says, I have a portfolio. By the way, I have another screen behind me, so I'm looking over it to see the question. So hopefully it doesn't look too funny up here on the screen. I have a portfolio of moderately aggressive risk tolerance currently. I'm about to start a new business, medical practice. I'm selling an investment property, so I'll be having an influx of cash from that. I'm planning on keeping the proceeds from the real estate in cash. Would your view be also to convert my investment portfolio to cash? Includes my SEP IRA. Stephen, look, I'm not an investment advisor. At Wealth Factory, we've got people on our accredited network like Ryan O'Shea that are investment advisors. So don't know that I'm truly allowed to just say, yes, you should move that to cash. I'll just say this. If it were me, I would move to cash. If it were me, that's what I would do. 401k, can it be transferred to a Roth IRA? Yes. There's a one time where you can move a 401k unless you're currently employed at that place and depending on their provisions. But most of the time, yes, you can move a 401k as a one-time exclusion over to a Roth IRA. Is it better to pay off debt with a low interest rate loan from insurance, or better to keep the money and add to the policy when you pay off debt versus not? Well, Phoenix, it just depends on, if the policy is earning 5% and the loan's less than 5%, then and the loan doesn't bother you. Like my mortgage, I didn't pay off my mortgage on my primary residence. And the reason is because the interest rate's like 4%, and I can do better than that in my cash value. And I could always pull out the cash value and pay it off if I wanted to, but I like having that flexibility. I like having that money when the right opportunities come my way. Other than higher costs on universal life, are there other reasons you don't like the product? Dwayne, I don't completely dislike the product. I have some concerns with the product, Dwayne. Universal life has a few issues. Mortality expenses. The older you get, the more the cost of insurance because it's built on a term chassis. There's a bundling effect as well, that based upon the deaths per thousand in a bundle of people that are in a similar situation to you, if those increase, they can increase the cost of insurance. So they have a flexibility as an insurance company to increase the cost of insurance. If you go to the universal life illustrations and you look at the guaranteed cost side, that guaranteed cost will destroy the policy. It will eliminate the cash value. Those policies look good if it's, if there's plenty of cash in there, because the cost of your mortality and cost of insurance is only the difference between the cash value and the death benefit, known as the net amount at risk. But the problem is, what if you're in a bad health situation, everybody jumps ship to a better policy, now you're moving to the higher cost of insurance, and so you have a risk of losing the death benefit. I've seen some good universal life policies that have high liquidity. I've even recommended them in a few cases, but whole life gives me stability, security. They can't increase the cost of insurance. They can't increase my premiums. They can't take away my death benefit, and there's a minimum guarantee. Universal life only has 2 of those 4 benefits. Yes, you can add riders to make it look closer to it, but look, even I have a lower health rating because of some kidney things with one of my whole life policies. I compared a Table 8 whole life policy properly funded to the very best out there with the company Advisors Excel that they were showing me several different universal life policies, and it couldn't compete because I was looking at what the risk factors are. And even after that, I was still going to have more cash in the future, even though the universal life gave me more cash up front. And I was looking at not only midterm, but long-term and the value of the death benefit. Where's the list of possible investments that Tom wrote? You know, we're going to actually, when we do a wrap up and we do the recording, we'll make sure that everybody has that list. So you have that since we built it. So Tom, let me know. We'll put that in the wrap up. Sorry, joined late. Not yet financially independent. So what should be my one thing goal heading into the new economy? Thanks. Heading in the new economy, your one thing goal is to get your financial house in order so that you have enough cash and liquidity. Just find where the leaks are, set up a wealth capture account, and start saving more money in a very safe place. How will insurance be a good hedge if the dollar is devalued? Phoenix, you know what? If the dollar is devalued, we're all going to face that. You're going to pull your cash value out and move it to other currencies, other denominations, other opportunities. So if you start seeing that devalued, you have that opportunity to access that cash. So that's the only way that it's a really good hedge. All right, let's see if there's any more questions. That's it. Hey, thanks so much, everyone. It was so great to be with you today and to share all this with you. Hopefully this has been of value. You'll be able to practically apply this. Look for the resources and things that we're providing here at Wealth Factory so you can take charge of your financial life. Take back control. Make personal finance personal once again. And make sure you have those practical steps to plug the leaks, build more wealth, get economically independent, and have that life that you absolutely love. Garrett Gunderson signing off.